Hey guys, good morning. Welcome to our session today. I hope you guys have been well, and I hope yesterday you had a great time during the day one of the fast. So, today's speaker we're going to have Lucky. So, Lucky is a software engineer at BDD Software Development. He's also the co-organizer for Josie.js and Soweto.js meetups in South Africa. So Josie is going to take us through to kill a working drone that is flying a drone with Twitter bananas and web APIs. So Lucky, you're very very much welcome. So yeah, you can start.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for an amazing introduction. There we go. That looks better. So at this point, if you're wondering who I am, I think I'll just highlight a few other things. So firstly, my name is Nhlanhla Lakinkolo. I do very many things. Firstly, I'm from an amazing city called Johannesburg in South Africa. And in South Africa, I work for a company called BBD Software Development. We build bespoke software for a wide range of organizations. But at BBD, I work for a unique team known as ATC, and we are charged with BBD's research and development functions, do some specialized consulting. And the one thing that really excites me the most about what I do is the fact that we are also responsible for providing training to BBD's 800 plus employees that are spread all over the world. So I'm also a lecturer. I teach at Wits University in the digital arts department. And I help organize a monthly meetup called Josie.js, which this year also started branching out into Soweto. So I also do some work with the government. I do some volunteer work. I also sit on the board of an NGO called the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. But the most important thing for you to know about me is that this is my channel. So please feel free to let me know what you think of this talk.
Oh, okay, yeah, we will definitely do so. Welcome so much. We are very excited for your talk. So yeah, you can start.
Awesome. So again, my Twitter handle is right there on the screen. Please feel free to let me know what you think of this talk. I look forward to your to your feedback, really. So while this conference has been filled with incredible speakers that probably taught you a lot of incredible things, this talk is going to be slightly different. That's because in this talk, I'll mostly be telling you about myself. I'll be telling you about some of the mistakes that I've made in recent times when it comes to decisions around technology. So I'll start by telling you a bit more about myself. A few years ago, I was diagnosed with an illness called narcolepsy. It sounds scarier than it is, but it's a sleep disorder that's characterized by randomly falling asleep, by having sleep paralysis, and a whole range of other things that sound scary. Around the same time, I was also diagnosed with an illness called ADHD. Now, what this actually means is that when I'm in a conference, when I'm in a meeting, or when I'm attending a lecture, I'm usually in one of two states.
Power nap. Strip nap. Victory nap.
So I'm either falling asleep, or the speaker will say something that catches my attention, and then my thoughts will just drift away with me. So when I attended a talk by the incredible Gergana Yang, she put up a slide that spoke about how she flew her drone with Node.js. In the same slide, she spoke about how she crashed this drone into the wall using Node.js. So this got me thinking. Firstly, how on earth did she manage to do this? And secondly, if you could kill a drone by flying it with Node, I wonder how else I could possibly kill a drone. So today, I'm bringing you 5 things or 5 ways to kill a perfectly good drone. I'll start with another story, well, a story. One evening, I was on my way home from a work function. I was a bit inebriated, and I did what I seem to end up doing when I'm bored. I ended up on this website that sells really, really cheap electronic stuff. And I accidentally bought a drone. I say accidentally because this site takes about 3 months to deliver things to South Africa. So by the time it arrived, I had completely forgotten about it. So I'm sitting at the office. I'm told that I have a delivery. It's a drone. First thing that comes to mind is, who on earth bought me a drone? Then I had to think about it, go back to my purchase history. Then I realized that I'm the one who actually purchased it. This is the drone that I bought. It's called the SG900S. It's an absolutely incredible drone. It comes with some really cool features. It has an HD camera that can stream to your app. It comes with an RC-based controller, and it's absolutely incredible. Can even get 20-minute flight time from it. But there's one problem. I don't have use for a drone. I live in a very small city, well, big, but it's condensed, which means that I'm always close to either a police station, a school, or something where flying a drone is actually not permitted. So I can't actually fly this drone freely without the necessary permits. So I had to find something else to do with it. A friend of mine said, well, doesn't matter what you decide to do, you have to show us what you do. So I decided I'm going to hack this drone and actually talk about how to do that. So as any expert hacker will tell you, the first step to hacking anything is observation. So you have to look at how the control schemes work, try and figure out how to then try and get your application that you're building to do exactly what this first application does. So this drone can be controlled in two ways. You can either use this RC controller, or you can use an Android application. So I wanted to mimic what this Android application does. I'm a developer. I'd like to think that I can code. So I assumed that this would be the easier option. So I don't know much about networking, but I do work with some really incredibly talented people who have experience working with networking things. So at this point, I spoke to some of my colleagues who then pointed me to an application called Wireshark. Now, Wireshark allows you to trace or log all the network activity on a specific port. So this was incredible because my drone, when turned on, would expose an open Wi-Fi network with absolutely no security, and I could then sniff what was happening on that application. This is what a Wireshark trace looks like. It looks scarier than it is. The colorful parts over here, these are the actual individual log entries. Once you click on one of them, at the bottom of the screen, you get an expansion of the data that's happening here. The problem here was that the data that I was tracing was data that was network activity on the drone itself. I needed to see what my phone was sending through this application so I can write an application that does the same thing. So I found this application on the Android Play Store called T-Packet Capture. Now, what this application does is that it allows you to log all of the network activity that's happening on your phone without needing to root your phone or do any of these dangerous things that we're told not to. This didn't help me much because what happened was that once I started using it, it actually blocked all the network activity from happening at all. But I did get to see something here. I saw that this application was sending UDP packets to my drone. So at this point, I realized that I was going down a rabbit hole that I might not ever come back from. I was advised that perhaps using Apple devices would be easier because they're so in sync. I could trace what was happening on the phone and be able to see it on the computer. I didn't own any of these devices, so I asked a friend of mine, Matthew, told him I would only be logging data from this one app. Needless to say, I saw some interesting things on my friend's phone, but because I was planning to speak about this experience, and flying this drone is quite dangerous because it's big, and I sometimes care about the safety of my audiences. So I decided to do something better. I decided to go with a smarter approach, and that is, of course, to simply buy a more fitting drone. So 2 weeks before a conference last year, I was asked, if you were to speak at this conference, what would you want to speak about? My answer was I'd probably try to hack a drone because I didn't think that I would be speaking about it. 2 weeks later, I had to give a talk on this thing. So I shopped around and I found this incredible drone called the Parrot Mambo Mini drone. It's a very small drone. It fits in the palm of my hand, and my hands aren't that big. But the cool thing about this drone is that, well, firstly, it comes with accessories that you can attach to it. So you can actually attach a Canon shooter and shoot at a conference audience. It has claws, so you fly this drone to go and get you a glass of water. But the cool thing here is that there were two ways to fly this drone. This drone could either be flown using Wi-Fi or using Bluetooth technology. And it came with a controller that was Bluetooth Low Energy enabled. And this means that I can then write my own thing to use any one of these two communication methods. I'd spent so much time with Wi-Fi that I was stressed and frustrated. And because I had never done anything with Bluetooth Low Energy, I decided that I should probably focus on Bluetooth so that I can get that opportunity to learn. Bluetooth might sound familiar for the older people. These devices were released, I think, early, mid, maybe late 2000s. And everyone had them attached to their faces, trying to look like they were in important, serious conversations to avoid social interaction, which we all probably miss now. For people around my age, without giving too much away, we'd just gone out of infrared technology. So we were sending files, images, and songs using Bluetooth, but we were still putting them together because of our experiences with infrared. Well, Bluetooth Low Energy is slightly different from traditional Bluetooth. And Bluetooth Low Energy, which is often marketed as Bluetooth Smart, is again a means of wireless communication. But it has three distinct things from the original or traditional Bluetooth. The first is that this one is much more power efficient. Organizations can run Bluetooth Low Energy devices for 4 years without needing to replace these batteries. This means that the applications that we use this Bluetooth Low Energy for are also slightly different. It's optimal for applications where you need to send short amounts of data at that very specific time. So the applications that we now use are ones that can be very efficient, connect with multiple devices, and of course, use less power. With that, one of the most interesting things about BLE is that you can connect up to 20 devices simultaneously. Of course, this is affected by the manufacturers, the hardware that's running these Bluetooth devices. But this, in contrast with the maximum 7 devices that we could go with traditional Bluetooth devices, is absolutely incredible. So a bit more about myself. I'm from a game development background. So I studied game design, and the application that I use the most, or the sort of development environment, is called Unity 3D. When I started working as an enterprise software developer, I still used Unity for all of my side projects. Anything that I had to build, I'd go in and smash it with Unity. This is because from Unity, I could then deploy to an Android device, an Apple device, I could deploy to the web, and I hit everything with Unity. And then I started working with a GDE named Mike Glazer. He's a GDE in web technology, and I feel like working with him sort of put me through this transformation, if you will. And I developed a new weapon called JavaScript. And I now hit absolutely everything with JavaScript. This project was no different. So did some research, and I found 2 libraries called Noble and Blino, which are essentially opposites of each other. So you can see the names themselves are almost back to back. But what these do is that Noble is used as a central module, or when you're building a central module, a central device that is going to speak to other peripheral devices. And Blino is used to implement those specific peripherals. When I speak about peripherals, I'm talking about things like your heart rate monitors, your headphones, perhaps, things like a drone. And a central module is sort of a command station that then connects with these different things. What I was trying to build was a command station to talk to my drone. And so I had to focus on Noble. I'd spent a bit of time in the South African Air Force, and finally, some of the knowledge that I got from learning about planes came to use. So there are 3 distinct movements that you need to understand when working with anything that flies, really. So the first is a roll. A roll is when a pilot just tilts the plane to one side and hopes that the wind will carry it where it needs to go. A yaw is almost as if you're spinning a car on the road. And a pitch, again, the pilot just points the plane up and hopes and prays that the wind will carry the plane where it needs to go. So, number 5, I bring in Node.js. Decided I'm going to fly this thing with Node, and I actually ran a Node server on my cell phone to try and get this done. The first thing that I found out was that in order to send a command to this drone, I needed to send this entire XML structure to this drone, telling the drone how to actually move. This was a lot, and I really didn't feel like generating or writing up all of this XML myself. But I was using JavaScript, and I did as JavaScript developers do. I went and tried to find someone who has already done something similar, and I found a script called minidrone.js. There's a joke that if you're looking for anything, just type in that name at JS, and chances are you'll find a script that does exactly that. So what this script allowed me to do is pass in 3 strings, and from these 3 strings, I could then get that entire XML structure. This means that I could write code that looks like this. So with just 1 line of code, I can generate that entire XML structure, which means that with less than 10 lines of code, I could connect to a drone and let the drone take off, which is absolutely incredible. Around the same time, Mike Fraser gave a talk titled, "What Should the Web Do?" And at this point, I started thinking about how web users want browsers to do absolutely everything that a native Android application or iOS application does. The good thing about this is that the gap between what native applications and what web can do is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And browser manufacturers are coming to the forefront. They're developing these things, they're building these things directly into the browser, which is absolutely incredible. And so at number 4, I decided I was going to fly this drone using JavaScript straight from my mobile browser. So this led me to something called Web Bluetooth, which is an incredible, relatively new feature of the web, where straight from the browser, we can now start interacting with devices. This means that we can run applications in the web, or PWA applications, that can start interacting with things that we couldn't get access to before. Again, because open source is such a critical part of what we do. I found another project that tried to do something similar. So Peter O'Shaughnessy, I found his GitHub account, and from his project, I found one script that did what I needed. He called it Drone V1.2. I refactored the script, removed some code, wrote some additional code, and I came up with 2 new scripts that are based on his, called Drone Connection Management to manage the connection of the drone, and then one called Drone Control, which exposes control functionality to you. This means that I can write code like this. Once importing these scripts, you can simply write drone move left, drone.move right, and the drone will respond accordingly. And this brings me to number 3, which is getting your drone to mimic other devices. I have a huge fascination for human-computer interaction. I truly believe that if we reimagine how humans can interact with computers beyond just the mouse and the keyboard, we can build really interesting human-computer interactions. Now, the fact that we as developers can't agree on much about which is best, which is not best, even amongst web developers themselves, they can't agree as to which framework is best to use. It's important then to have some sort of authority that tries to build the key components of what we need into the devices themselves. So that's what the W3C tries to do. By developing web standards, its mission is to lead the web to its full potential, to making it a really plausible way of delivering software content to absolutely everyone. The MDN web docs try to document what is available in which browser quite well, and I consider it as my source of truth as to what is available out there. When I went to this page, there was one API that caught my attention, something that I didn't know that web browsers could do, and that is to tap into a cell phone's accelerometer, ambient light sensor, and all of these sensors that our phones have. Now, this is called, at the time it was called generic, but this is the Sensors API. Now, to check if your device supports one of these things, you simply use the different ways that you can, using JavaScript, so you can check if it's in the window, and you can check if the function actually exists. To create this new sensor, so you can start reading from it, you literally just say sensor is equal to new accelerometer. To start reading, simply say sensor start. To stop reading, because we can't just read data forever, sensor.stop. So you can see that this is developed and designed in a way to be intuitive for developers as well. You can add an event listener so that you can start using the data that you're getting directly from it. And based on this, I could then build something where once I pick up my phone, my drone will actually respond to the movements of my phone. A key component of being a good platform to dev on is having good developer tools. And one example of this is the Chrome browser's debugger and tool and dev tools. So once I've connected to my phone, I can actually debug what's happening on my phone through my computer. And as I move my phone, the accelerometer values are provided to me in X, Y, Z coordinates, which means that I could then write code that simply maps these X, Y, Z coordinates of my phone and translate those to movements for the drone, such as move forward, move back, move left and right. And what this then looks like is this. So when I tilt my phone up, the drone takes off. When I tilt it forward, the drone moves forward, back, backwards. And when I put my phone back to its resting position, the drone can simply land. As you can see, that's almost a guaranteed way of crashing your drone. Don't do it. But number two, which is, in my opinion, absolutely very fun and interesting, and a friend recently described it as witchcraft, is that we can fly drones using hand gestures. Yes, directly from our devices. So another story, I was sitting at the office and it was a work function. Someone came up to me, said something and gave me a box. I honestly do not remember who this person is, but this is the box that they gave me. It's called the Leap Motion Sensor. And what this does is it's a tiny camera that when you put it in front of you has an application, and it actually tries to map out the different joints and bones in your hands. So using this information about, or using the data about where your hands are or how your hands are shaped, I wrote a small application that actually tries to translate all of those things into movements of a drone. And what that looks like is this. So once my hand is over the camera, I can tilt my hand in the different directions and my drone will actually go and follow that movement. So it's a bit difficult to steer, particularly because I don't get what's called haptic feedback back to me. So I'm not entirely sure where my hand is in relation to the camera unless I'm looking at it. But this also allows me to do things like rotating the drone, which are very interesting movements that would otherwise be very difficult with my first demo using the phone. But this is a really, really cool way of flying this drone. And again, a difficult part of having a virtual conference is that doing this demo and trying to keep a drone within the frame of a camera is extremely, extremely difficult. And that's why I couldn't demonstrate live to you today. Something else about me, I have one sibling. He's 10 years old, which is significantly younger than me. I find him fascinating because all the things that frustrate me about him, I realize that are traits that I have as well. So I'm learning a lot about myself from him. One of the things that I'm learning is how inquisitive he is, how he wants to learn. And so I'm trying to get him interested in technology just by exposing him to it. And through that process, I've realized that a lot of people fear technology. They see technology as this foreign thing that is so difficult and so challenging. So what I've tried to do is try and make it as accessible to them as possible. And one of the ways that I've realized we can do this as developers, particularly developers who care about developing the communities around us, is by presenting technology in a way that people understand. Take something that people didn't think could be filled with technology and transform it. Charge it with technology and see how their eyes just open up in amazement. And so with that, at number one, I bring you flying a drone with bananas, or any fruit for that matter. So I'm going to show you how this works first, and then I'll talk you through it. So as you can see, I've got 4 bananas. I had 4 because I didn't have breakfast, got hungry, so I decided to eat one of them. But as you can see, I'm plugging wires directly into these fruits. And this What this allows me to do is that when I touch one of these fruits, I can actually send different commands to my drone. So the one that I'm plugging in right now is a very special one. I call it the special fruit because it requires, or for this to work, I need to keep holding the one main fruit while touching the others. So once I've plugged these in, I can simply start my application. And once the application has started and the drone is taken off, touching the different fruits actually moves the drone in the different directions. And then I can also get the drone to do a backflip, which excites me every single time I do it. So once again, let's try and do backflip. And again, because this is a virtual conference, we can't actually see that drone flip correctly. And because I'm so excited about the drone flip, I decided to record a separate demo just for that flip. So I put the drone on a chair, and now we can see that drone flip in real time, within the frame of our screen. And again, this is a very difficult way of flying a drone, and crashing it is actually quite easy. But the cool thing about this is that I can now, or about this drone, is that it's so small, I can safely land it on my palm. So how did I do this? I used something called a Raspberry, a Makey Makey, which is actually based on an Arduino. And this Makey Makey allows you to connect absolutely anything and turn it into a keyboard. Now, how this works is that we as humans are organic matter, or are made up of organic matter, significant amount of water, and so our fruits meet any organic matter really. They have a considerable amount of water. Now, water has the potential, or can conduct some electricity. So what I'm doing there is that, or what this thing does, is that when it senses that one of the pins have been grounded, which is why I need to keep holding that special fruit. The special fruit is actually connected to ground. So as I'm grounding these different pins, or when I'm touching these different fruit, I'm actually closing the circuit from that pin to the ground. And that current, or that electricity, runs through me to try and get to ground. And then write software that picks up that tiny change. Now this cost about 1,000 rands, which is 1,000 rands is probably about $50, if I'm not mistaken, which is a significant amount of money. And so I decided that I need to try and find an easier way or cheaper way to build this. So I got the cheapest Arduino I could find, which was the Arduino Uno. And with the Arduino Uno, I had to write and build software. I had to build a circuit and write some software that could actually pick this up myself using some C code. Now, I have a blog on dev.to that highlights how you can build your own custom controller using any fruit, using the cheapest Arduino board available on the market. Feel free to check that blog out if you want to build your own custom controller using absolutely anything. Now, the question that I always get when I talk about all of these crazy things that I build with drones is why? Why would you go and try and fly a drone with bananas? Well, it's simple. In our field, as developers, we have to constantly grow, we have to constantly learn. If you stop learning, you stop being a good developer. And this is particularly because technology continuously changes at a very rapid rate. And the only way that you can stay relevant is by learning and improving yourself. And so I do this in order to learn. And I learn so that I can grow and help others around me grow. And I do this by building these ridiculous things, because then I can have so much fun just by learning. So if you take one thing away from this talk, is that you should keep playing, because as you play, you learn and you grow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that session. I have learned a lot. I never knew someone can fly a drone with bananas. That is mad. I didn't know even it was like it was a possibility. But like thank you so much for the session. It was fun. It was so fun. I had fun. I hope others had fun. So I don't know if maybe there are questions from the audience we could take. So if you do have a question, please feel free to post it in the chat. So before people start posting, so tell us, Lucky, what else apart from playing drones do you do actually? Free time, that is.
Ah, so I have very little free time, and that's because I'm involved in so many of these initiatives. But I like sports, so I play
Mm-hmm.
soccer, I play video games. I wish I built video games, but I don't have the time. But yeah, I absolutely love video games, not
Mm-hmm.
particularly because I enjoy playing them, but because I think they have the potential to be a great tool for teaching. So I'm fascinated by the use of games as a way of teaching people. So yeah, that's effectively what I do. It's better, and I speak at conferences because I like talking.
Yeah, and another question. So from your bio, I saw you have talks or you have communities like Soweto.js. Could you tell us more about it? And if you guys do hold maybe virtual conference, is there a way, because we are all virtual right now, could you like have a link where we can attend? Have a schedule so that people who are interested can join.
Yes, absolutely. So I co-organize Josie Chess with a few really incredible developers in the South African dev
Okay.
community, and Soweto JS was launched this year. We
Mm-hmm.
realized that the community was very centralized in like your more affluent parts of Johannesburg, and that we needed to start
Okay.
decentralizing it. So we decided we're going to open this up in Soweto. We are on meetup.com. So if you just search for Josie JS on meetup.com, you can see our schedule there.
Okay.
We we've taken our meetup, our monthly meetup virtual as well because we didn't have a choice but to. So every third Thursday of the month, we have our meetup and we stream to YouTube. So you can definitely check out there. The schedule and links and everything are on meetup.com. Just chess.
Okay, so how frequent are your meetups?
Once a month. So we meet once a month.
Oh, once a month.
Yes.
So like, do you have for both Soweto, Joyce, and Josie? Do you have different, or it's just like a centralized, like you do it all together?
So it is meant to be different. So we're meant to
Okay.
have one a month for each one of them, but because of virtual nature of it, we decided to combine them while we're doing them virtually. But as soon as we are able to go back to doing them in person, we'll be splitting them up again. And we're going to create more meetups in more decentralized areas, in underrepresented areas. And we're going to physically have them there once we can. That's the mission. That's the goal.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much. Since I can see there is no questions from the audience, I think we are going to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Lucky, for joining us. It has been wonderful hosting you. It has been, an amazing experience knowing what you do. Your projects are crazy. But then we are going to try hacking a drone. I have never thought of in that like direction. But thank you so much for helping us to see like drones in a new perspective. Flying drone with bananas. Can even do it with mangoes if possible. So thank you so much for that wonderful experience. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and we would really love to have you maybe next time, next to that first. We'll love to know what other projects maybe you're working on so that you can come share with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been
Okay.
incredible.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Okay. So hey guys, that is it for the morning session. I hope you guys enjoyed the sessions. I hope you guys learned a lot. So we are going to come back at exactly 11 o'clock for 11 a.m. For the second session. So I hope I will see you guys there. So thank you for joining.
Hello?
Hello, Paul.
Yes.
Welcome to today's session. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you.
So, could you kindly tell us about yourself before we begin?
Okay, yeah, sure. So I'm Paul Mandele. I'm from Tanzania, and my background is mostly in consulting, but mostly consulting around innovation and tech. Though now my focus is consulting around product management. But also I've been leading GDG Dar es Salaam for about 4 years now. Yeah,
Okay.
so mostly I've been working with startups in terms of helping them in designing and building their products from idea stage to product market fit. But also
Okay.
in the consulting side, I've been consulting for local and international companies on the same.
Okay, thank you so much, Paul. So today's session with Paul, we're going to have building digital products the right way. So, Paul, anytime you want to start, we're good to go. So, karibu sana.
Asante. Yeah, so good. I think we can start. All right, so can I start?
Yes, you can start.
Okay, sure. Uh, as I introduced myself, again, I'm Paul Mandele. Yeah, so I'm a chef and I like cooking. So today we'll be cooking the digital way. Okay, yeah, so just kidding. So as I introduce myself, I'm Paul. I mostly do product management consulting for now. And I shared my background. I hope you've heard. Yeah, so my talk will be more of a conversation in terms of what I think is the right way to build to making successful digital products. Yeah, so be more of a conversation and less of a technical talk. Yeah, so I think the first question should be what makes a great product? Because most of us, I believe, are developers or are in one way or the other dealing with digital products. But the question to most of us, I guess, and I suppose, is how do I make my product great, or how do I make my product successful? But the success of product doesn't start from nowhere. There are some things, or there should be things that makes a product great. Now, the question again is what makes a great product? Uh, to most developers, maybe if the product has nice features, then that could be a great product. But I say no. Great products or nice features don't make great product. Why? We're gonna talk more about that. And some may say nice UI or nice user interface will result to a great product. Perhaps or probably, but the answer is no, that doesn't make a great product. Or some could say the more features the product have, then that would be a great product. Yes and no, but mostly no. You can have a great product that have few features. Some would say the more the product algorithm becomes complex, then the better the product. But the answer is no. We have products that don't have any complex algorithm, and yet they are great products in the market, or they are successful in the market. Some would say maybe if a product has complex logic, then that's a great product. Yes and no, but mostly no. A product can have a very simple logic and yet become a great product. Now, what makes a great product? Again, back to the question. The best answer, at least for me, You can have your own, but I believe this is what makes, or this is the truth, that a best product or a great product is a function of three key components. First is the business viability of that product. That means the ability of that product bringing business. Because if that product doesn't bring business, then means you won't be pushing money and resources anytime where you don't get any input from whatever you're doing, because that makes it not sustainable. So if you can't run it for 10 years, then that it's not a great product. So it should have a business value, or should have a way it returns your investment. Otherwise, it won't be a great product, even if it's usable. But also, a great product, it's a function of the technical feasibility. That means how technically that product is implemented. Makes a product great, yes, but technical feasibility can't stand on its own. Also, there's another aspect of the user. So because you're building a product that needs to be used by your users, then that product needs to have a component, or needs to have a desirability aspect from the user. So that is, you have a very nice product, and then the moment you deploy it to the users, and then they don't feel like they need it, or they don't feel like they should use that product. So if it doesn't have that desirability component, then that product won't be great, because if it's not used, it's not used, then it's not a great product. So based on my previous questions, all those aspects that I mentioned that doesn't make a great product, it's not that they don't make great products in such, but in real sense, it's that they can't stand alone. So for a product to be great, those are just some aspects what makes a product great. But a great product, it's a combination of the three key components, which is the user desirability, technical feasibility, but also the business viability. Now, in terms of business, whether you are a startup or you're building for a big company, or you're a big company, you want to build a product, it starts with your business objectives. Why do you want to build that product business-wise? Or what do you want to achieve business-wise by building that product? Unless you have that defined, then even if you build a product, it won't be great, because if it doesn't align to any of your objectives, then it's not great to you. Probably it may be great to the users. But also, what are your goals and ambitions? Like, where do you want your product to reach, and why? And by the product reaching that stage, what comes to you in return? But also, there's an aspect of context and alignment. So suppose, let's say you are a hospital, you want to do a digital product. How does that product align to your core business? Or how does the product align to your customer base? Even if it's a new customer segment, or it's a new market, or it's a new business, how does it align with the environment of the users, or with your goals in a way? I love using this example that the same Coke, there are places where you can buy, for example, in Tanzania, you can buy for 500 shillings, which is around 0.4 USD. There are some places where you can even buy the same Coke for 3 USD, which is not technically, you're selling the same product but at different prices. So what defines that price is not only the technical aspect of the product, but the business aspect of the product. And if your business aspect is okay, Then you have people who are willing to pass by a kiosk that sells the same Coke for 0.4 USD, and then they'll drive all the way to the place where they're gonna buy the same Coke for 3 USD, because to them it's aligned with their context and their environment and their needs. In terms of the technical side or the technical aspect of the product, there's an issue of resources, whether you have the resources to build that product, because if you build a product not in the right way because of you don't have some resources, then that product won't be functional as it was desired to be. So if it won't be that way, or if it won't be functional in a desired way, then it won't be great even if it's working. But also there's an issue of scalability. So you may start with, let's say, 100 users. Then what if suddenly you get 1 million users? Will your product sustain the 1 million users? If not, then that's a technical aspect that you have to look upon. There's an aspect of usability. You may have very nice features, but if they are not usable, then those features are meaningless. There's an aspect of security nowadays, because you're dealing with people's data, but also you're dealing with, in a way, with some sensitive data that may not be directly identifying people, but your app may be processing transactions and so on. If you don't check on that aspect of security, it will hurt the success of your product in a way. There's an issue of accessibility, which is very key, especially in developing countries where, let's say, you build a very nice product, let's say, a very nice web system or very nice application, or suppose it's an application, and then can only be accessed, let's say, with iPhone 11, or can only be accessed with it's compatible with Android 10. But in real sense, the context of your users, maybe majority of them have Android 4 devices. Then if it's not accessible to them and they're the ones you are targeting, then it being technically good, it having a business viability, then won't bring value to that product, because that accessibility in itself hurts the growth of that product. And there's another aspect, or the third aspect of the user desirability. Desirability comes from the experience. The moment, or your first impression, or the first moment you interact with a product, if you get a bad experience, then you won't use it anymore. Or if you get a good experience, then you'll desire to use it the more. In terms of user experience, first it comes from, why should the user use your application? In terms of, is there any pain that you're relieving the user by them using your application, or is there any problem that you're solving that they need to use your application because their problem gets solved, or there's something that they're struggling to do, or there's something that your product improves in their lives. Unless it improves something in their lives, they won't desire to use your application or your product. But also, does it align with their culture and identity? So if you are targeting youth, there's a way you need to package the experience in a way it aligns with their identity. Or if you're targeting old people, or if you're targeting farmers, and so on. But also, there's one component that most developers focus on, which is only the wow factors, like because my product have a nice UI, it has nice transitions and animations, then people love it. But that is only one aspect of a great product, but it needs to have all other aspects for it to be a great product. And on this sense, I love using an example of gift giving. So I always ask people, because mostly I interact with startups or companies. So whenever they tell me about their product, I would ask them, have you ever received a gift that you just accepted that gift because you want to keep the relationship with the person that has given you the gift, or you just had to accept it just because if you don't accept it, then there'll be a challenge, or in a way to hurt your relationship, but not because you want it or not because you're longing to have it. And many people agree with me that there are such occasions. Now the question is, if someone has invested their time, their resources, and sometimes they've even spent long time planning for that gift they're presenting to you, and yet you accept that gift just not because you have it. Now the question is, if you get that experience with a gift that a person gives you for free, what about a product that you're sending to the user and you want them to pay? I think you can imagine the experience, because if someone has toiled and they're giving it for free and then you just accept a gift just because, but and you're bringing a product of that same with that same experience to the same users that you want them to pay for that product, in real sense they won't be able to pay it. They won't even be able to use it even if you give it for free. uh, Now, moving forward, above everything, if you want to build a great product, it starts by putting yourself in the shoes of the prospective user. That is, you need to ask yourself, if I I am that user and I'm told about this product, or the product is presented to me, will I use it? Will I be ready to pay for it? Or will I use it for one day? Or will I use it for years? Or suppose, which is a true story for most of Africans. Suppose my phone tells me that you have low memory, and now I have this product and other products. Which one will I uninstall? Will I uninstall this, or I'll keep this because I need it and I'll find another application to uninstall? So putting yourself in that context gives you the picture of the reality of that user. But it doesn't stop there, because the more you know the user, the more you'll put yourself in their context. But if you don't know them more, then you need to start with research. So that means, to be able to build a great product, it starts with the user research. Yes, you have your business context, you have your objectives, you know you're technically capable of doing that product, but you are not building that product for yourself. You're building for someone else to use and to be able to pay for it. So if that's the reality, then you need to involve that person from the very first day before you put anything into building that product. Now there are different stages in building digital products, or in building successful products. But in short, or in summary, the process involves the discovery stage, the design stage, the development stage, and the go-to-market stage, and then the growth stage. But because you're building for the user, you're not building for yourself, there's a concept, or researchers or people who have been doing these products for a long time came up with an approach or a methodology. They call it. It started with they started calling it human-centered design, and they derived to products to something they call it user-centered design, which means you put all your processes before, or let me put this way: you put your user before everything that you do, because that is the person you are targeting with the product. So if they're gonna use, you want them to use it for years, then you need to also spend more time with them in the overall process, whether in discovery stage or in design or in development. So every stage that you're building your product, in every stage, then your user should be the core of that process. So that's why they said it's user centered. So it means that every stage that you move, you need to have a go forward, or you need to have a user approval in simple terms. So to be able to do that, that's where comes the concept of agile. Agile means you're building small modules, or you're building in a modular way, iteratively, where you build, uh, let's say if you're building an app, let's say you build user authentication, and then you start from that is you start from understanding the user needs, you go to designing, you go to development, and then if it's something that is shippable, then also you ship that same module until it's approved and you see that it's okay to stand on its own. Then you go to another module, and you move on. So that's where the concept of agile comes. But another thing is, a product also, it's a function of other aspects that um, we don't consider much, especially if you're from the tech background or if you're a developer. There's aspect of marketing, there's aspect of branding, there's aspect of selling the product, which also, if you want to build a great product, all those aspects needs to be within your process. So you don't build a product and then it's done, you go market it, or you build a product and once it's done, you go sell it, or you build a product, once it's done, then you start thinking of how you brand it. So everything needs to go hand in hand, or needs to go in parallel. Uh, Now I'll talk in short about the processes because we don't have much time. Uh, in the product discovery stage, what you do is you want to define your problem or solution statement. So that is, we said you have aspect of business, you have the aspect of technical, and the aspect of the user. Now in the discovery, you have your business goals and objectives. Okay, you know your user in a way. If you don't know them that much, then that means you need to spend time to know more about the user. You do user research, you map their lives or their culture, you map their age, the way, like the total way of life of that user. You map them in terms of there are different methodologies. There are empathy maps, personas, uh, and through that, it helps you to put your business objectives in the context of the users. Also, it helps you frame your communication for the same product. It helps you also to define or to frame your go-to-market strategy, which now goes to the marketing, to the sales, before even you have started building the product. Now, once you at least have a good picture of what you need to build, uh, these in a way they're just assumptions, because you thought of your objectives, you thought of the user perspective, but also you, in a way, you did a research. But to package that, again, you might package it in a wrong way, or you may package it in a way that doesn't really align with what the user told you, because you're packaging your way, not the user's way. That's where comes the design stage. So the design stage mainly is to visualize your thinking, which comes from your objectives and so on, but also helps you visualize the insights you got from the user research now, but also your assumptions, because building a feature in first hand is, I think the user will use this feature if it's packaged or if it's built this way. But you haven't brought that, you haven't sent that feature to the user and they said, yes, this is how we want to use the feature. So at this stage, you're still visualizing what you think and the insights and your assumptions. Again, once you visualize, I said to be able to do that the best way or without using much resources, you need to do iteratively. So means once you have done the design, then you go back to the user to validate whether they what you've packaged aligns with what they feel or they'll be ready to use before you start development. And now if you at least you have a larger percentage that now I have confidence that they will be able to use based on your research. Now you can go to start development. Again, you go developing feature by feature. You build, the best way is not, let me put it the right way, it's not building feature by feature, but building value by value. That's the right way to put it, because what your product does is it delivers value to the user. So you need to think from the value perspective, not from the feature perspective, which in product development or in product management, they call them user stories. So because as a user, let's say, I want to be able to sell my farm produce with your app. That's what I want to achieve. So even for you as a developer, you need to think that way, that I have to enable that user to sell their produce. Not I want to build a feature where you can post a product and then once you post it, goes to the database and does 1, 2, 3, you can search, there's an algorithm that can put that product first. So it starts with how the user perceives that solution or that problem. That way, you'll be building something that aligns with the user. So you can translate that user story now into features, but it doesn't start from features to now how the user use it, but it starts from how the user want to use your product to how you package that. For example, let's say a user could be feeling that they only need to be able to use their phone to authenticate themselves to use your application. But if you think from the feature perspective, you may start with, we need social login, we need Firebase authentication, we need 1, 2, 3, 4. But in real sense, maybe from the user perspective, they just need to be able to put in their number and then you validate whether they own that number. And once you do that, they're good. So that's why you need to start from the user perspective. Now, again, you build one value or one user story at a time. So let's say now you're good that the user can be able to post, or they can be able to sell their products or their produce with your application. Let's say that's value 1. So once you have built that, again, you go to the user, you test to check whether you packaged it the right way before saying, I'm good to go, I'm going to build another feature or I'm going to build another user story. So once you have built values that if they are compiled together, those values can bring the 80% of the value that you want to bring to the user, now you are good to go to the market. But one key thing on that sense is you need to, if you want to build great product with few resources and in short time, you need to spend your time, you need to spend 80% of your time building 20% that brings 80% of the desired value. I repeat, if you want to build a great product with minimum resources in short time, you need to spend 80% of your time building the 20% features that brings 80% of the desired value by the user. So that means you will go to the market early to validate, but also you will have used minimal resources even if you will fail. But also it gives you time to iterate and test other ideas if that first idea fails. But also, if it goes well, then you will have delivered 80% of the desired value in the shortest period of time. So go to market is to go validate the desirability, the usability, and the solution alignment before you are sure that now this product is good to sell it. So once you go iteratively the same processes from stage one. So once you're good or you are confident that now the product is good to go, which in technical terms we say it's minimum viable product, but in product development or in a product way, it needs to be called minimum lovable product. So because you want that product to be loved by the users, even if it doesn't have all the features that you plan to build. So it needs to bring the 80% of the value in a way the user will need and they want to use it. That's the essence of translating it from minimum viable to minimum lovable, because if the user won't love that product, then it's not viable anymore because they don't use it, then they won't pay for it. If they won't pay for it, it's not business viable. Now, if everything goes well, or you're now confident, that's where you go to the product growth, where now you scale the product now to the mass, or if you launched with a small segment, that's when you launch it now to the bigger segment. So product growth is more of scaling the success of all the previous steps now to a bigger audience. Because of time, I won't go into much details, but key thing is you're not building your product. You're building the product for the users. So if you want your product to be great, you need to put your users first, because users want to wear shoes that doesn't fit them, even if you give them for free. So that should be the takeaway, that which is true even to you, that even if I give you very nice shoes, you won't wear them unless they fit you. Otherwise, you may put them just for show or for remembrance, but you won't use them, because you don't want your users to buy your product and just put the product aside just for the case of having it, but you want them to use it because that's where the value is. Yeah, so without wasting time, thank you. That's what I had for today in short. It's also because we have limited time, I could share more. So thank you. Welcome. If there's a question, if we can handle questions via this medium, or if there's anything that I have to clarify.
Thank you so much, Paul, for the session. It was super insightful. Thank you so much for touching on things to do with design thinking. You have helped us to, doing products, not necessarily touching the code side of it, but at least the soft skill side of it, like what you need to know. And I think it's a very good beginning place for beginners, as to just get the broad perspective of what you should know before you jump into code, like you say, the business perspective side, um the technical side, and also the user side. You need to know your user, like you said. You're not building for yourself. You need to put your users up there. So we are very, very grateful, Paul. I don't know if there's any questions from the audience which you can answer before we wind up. And also I can see a question here from Brian. I'm really not sure what he wants to ask, but he says, okay, I think he just wants the link for this GDG edition. Brian, there are videos at our YouTube channel, so if you missed any, you you can go back and check. So like if you missed the morning session, you can just go back and check from morning. It's recorded, so you won't miss a thing. I don't see if there's any questions. So before we wind up, Paul, could you like just tell us a little bit of advice, like what kind of advice will you give someone who's starting out in coding, not necessarily like the technical bit. You can also do the soft skill kind of it. So let's say if I'm starting to code, so what will the advice you give me as a beginner?
Okay. So if you want to start coding, to me, I would advise you to first learn the human psychology, because you will be coding for people to use. So unless you
Okay.
understand how people behave or how people interact with things, then you won't be able to
Mm-hmm.
build things that they will love to use. But by saying that, it doesn't mean that you need to go now do a bachelor degree in psychology, but there are methodology, simplified ways of learning that. So, like the design
Okay.
thinking, it's a simplified way of learning about human psychology and how they decide. But also, there are other simple ways of learning that. That will give you a foundation of how you package your code in a way that it will attract your users to use it. And on top of that, I would advise
Okay.
beginners to learn the foundations of programming in general, in terms of what is the process,
Okay.
scalability, uh, before they go straight into saying I'm coding in React or I'm coding in Java or any other language. Just learning the foundation of algorithms. I'll put in his way, like how do you build things for speed, to optimize them for speed, to optimize them for scalability, to optimize them for accessibility before you go into actual code. So that would be my advice.
Okay, thank you so much for that talk. So like you said, you should like really, really look at your user and not yourself. So you're building for your user, you're not building for yourself. So we have posted a link on the chat. Please do feel free to join that chat by 11:30. We're going to have our closing remarks, and we would love to have you there before we round up our DEFES. So I really hope you enjoyed this session. We're really, really grateful for you, Paul. Again, karibu sana. And if if you guys are organizing also a DEFES, we'd love to join you. Do you have like DEFES Tanzania or Dar es Salaam?
Yeah, sure. We'll share more details.
Yes, please do. We would really love to. Yes, we would really love to join you guys and share more and network more. So I think that is all for the session, unless you have something to add.
Uh, Maybe just something to add is that first, another thing is now when it comes to building a product, don't fall
Mm-hmm.
in love with your ideas,
Okay.
because your ideas are just assumptions.
Okay.
So it's not bad to have ideas because that's where you start, but don't fall
Mm-hmm.
in love or don't fall into the trap of being too attached with your ideas, because your
Mm-hmm.
ideas may work in reality, or the way you package your ideas may not be in line with how the reality is. So you use your ideas to build a foundation, but not to grow with them. So those are just foundational. So uh, after you have the foundation, then uh, user insights on other the business aspect of your product, the technical aspect of your product will shape your product in a way. But also when you
Mm-hmm.
go to sell, there will be investors or other partners that in a way you will need them in your product. They also shape your product in a way. So if you fell in love with your concepts, your ideas, then it would be hard for you to even scale that. It's even on the aspect of investment. You may have an investor who says, "Yes, I want to invest. I've seen value in this, but for me to invest, I want us to go this direction." So if you are too attached, it will be hard, but also to see the other perspective, because someone may have already done the same business, let's say for years, and you are just starting. Just because you had a great idea doesn't mean that you may have the best idea. So that's the essence of being open and being not to be attached with your ideas. So,
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for the insight. Okay. So
very nice.
that is, yeah, so that is it for today. We're going to end our session. So I hope you guys really learned a lot. And so we're going to jump into the other session. So please feel free to go to our chat and copy the link and join. I hope you guys have learned a lot, and see you next year for that first. Goodbye.